All right, we're here with Mike Mitchell and Brendan Anderson. Guys, thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah.
All right, so let's first talk. We've got the XFL draft. This is kind of like the precursor to what's going to happen. And this is recorded Sunday night, so things could change at the blink of an eye. We'll start with the GOAT, the XFL insider, even though he doesn't like to be called that, Mike Mitchell. Is there any kind of rumblings you're hearing before the draft?
There's a lot going on right now. Like a lot of players and agents are talking. It's difficult because, you mentioned the insider part. Oftentimes I don't like to go public with certain things, but I can say this, there are certain USFL players that were released by NFL teams that have had talks with the XFL and that have reached out to the XFL to try to be selected in the draft or to end up on teams. And two of the names I've been hearing, and I'm not saying that they're going to be announced on Tuesday as assigned quarterbacks, but there's been some backwards moves, backrooms moves to try to see if they can angle themselves in. And that's Kyle Sloter, the New Orleans Breakers quarterback, and Luis Perez, the New Jersey Generals quarterback. So everybody's familiar with Luis now in this space. So those are two guys that I've been hearing rumblings about. I'm not so sure where Perez would end up, but and I can't confirm this. So I usually don't. I'm uncomfortable sometimes with going forward with stuff like this because it may very well not happen. But I have heard about Kyle Sloter potentially with Arlington. Now, he could end up back with the Breakers. I do know that the USFL hired John D. Filippo, who's his former offensive coordinator in Minnesota. And it's possible, this is a great thing about these leagues, is that someone like Sloter can end up getting more money and being paid more by the USFL than he was last season. So that's the leverage that's here for some players in terms of making choices. I also know one of the other USFL quarterbacks everybody's familiar with is Brian Scott. We know he's been working out with Jordan Palmer. The XFL actually listed him as one of the quarterbacks that was, what did they use? Under evaluation. Scott is a lock to be in the XFL. I suppose things can change between now and then, but you won't hear his name on Tuesday. And the reason for that is he's still under contract with the USFL. Now he can work out with Jordan Palmer. That's his own free time. He can do any quarterback that's under any league can work out with Palmer as a personal quarterback coach, but he's cannot sign an XFL contract or commit to the XFL if he's under contract with the USFL. And that's the key verbiage we've been hearing. I've been writing about for months and been pointing out for months is that January period, because you have a lot of potential players from the NFL whose practice squad contracts expire after the season who could join the XFL. And then, of course, you have USFL players whose contracts expire on 12/31 who can join the XFL. And that would be someone like a Brian Scott. There are others right now that I can't really get into. I can't name because of, the information I've been given off the record. But, the info that I have in terms of the XFL is they're looking for, and I'm not in any way trying to downgrade the USFL players, but I think the XFL has an interest, maybe 40 to 50 USFL players tops. And so whether or not they draft them, sign them, we'll see. Of course, USFL has a lot of great players there, but I think the XFL, we saw, Anthony Miller did a tremendous job writing an article covering the recent Zoom call held by Doug Whaley and Russ Giglio. And they listed, which was very forthcoming. They listed the number of players in the draft pool that are from the last 3 NFL draft classes. And I think Russ Giglio mentioned roughly 725 players are from the NFL 2022 draft class. And the XFL, as we know, for months on end, we're at all the showcase games, at all the college all-star games, at pro days during the draft, at the combine itself. So they've scouted this recent class thoroughly. And it's a lot of players who recently cut in camp, undrafted guys who got mini camp invites but didn't get signed. So I think they're going to skew a little bit more younger. And I know the USFL has a lot of good players, but a lot of those guys were guys who were out of the NFL mix. Unfortunately, for some, like guys like Darius Victor, who I think still should be in the NFL. These are players that were out of the mix for like 2 or 3 years, and they haven't had an opportunity. I think the XFL is looking going to skew younger. They'll have some veterans in the mix. The teams are, of course, going to be attached to some of the players, like the personnel directors, like Randy Mueller will be attached to guys he personally drafted and picked up in the AAF, or he personally drafted and signed with Houston in the XFL. So you could see a lot of XFL 2020 guys sprinkled into these teams. But I think they're going to skew more younger. And I know 725 sounds like a crazy number, but the reason for the uptick there is because of COVID. Because there was an extra year of eligibility towards players. That's why when Rogelio went through the numbers, he said it's 115 from the 2021 class, and I think I have it here somewhere, 275 from the 2020 class. So the numbers are higher this year for this particular draft class that just passed. So I think they're going to skew younger. That's a lot of players. That's over 1,100 players out of what is reported to be by the league itself, a 1,700 player draft class. So that leaves 600 other guys. It's fascinating. This whole draft process, the mystery part of it is you can argue that maybe we should have more information on who's in the pool itself, but the mystery part of it makes it a little bit more fun because there may be some names that we haven't heard.
Yeah. One thing is interesting when people complain that they're like, well, why don't they release the draft pool of all the whatever 1,700 players? Well, because they don't want the USFL to see that who they have and they're looking at. So I mean, in either side, so you're never going to get.
That's a fair
list.
point, Mark. A lot of people don't make that point. That's very fair because the last time the XFL had this draft process 3 years ago in 2019, in the fall 2019, there was no AAF. Unfortunately, the AAF went out of business, so there was no direct competition there. So I know that, what's funny is we know a little bit, right? Because a lot of players and coaches have publicized the fact that they're in the draft pool. If you're on social media, you see that constantly. And if you keep track of it, do your homework and make a list like crazy people like me have, then you have an idea a lot of the players that are in the pool. And then we know that the AA guys, that's the NFL Alumni Academy graduates, are automatically going to be on XFL rosters in training camp. That's the 66 players per team.
Mm-hmm.
And then we know about the January period, which is what we were just talking about, the 1231, the practice squad guys, the fringe NFL guys that are still waiting for an NFL opportunity. So, yes, I think it would have been cool if, like back in 2019, because back in 2019, when I went to the showcase in Montclair State, legendary Sam Mills alma mater, a Hall of Famer, they gave you a full list of everybody who was at the showcases, every single player. So you had so that was cool, right? But it's a little bit different now. The competition makes it a little bit different. They're a little more secretive, even though if you've been following this closely, you kind of have an idea which players are in this group. I didn't mention even the XFL 2020 guys that are automatically in the draft pool. Doesn't mean they'll be selected, but they're in there. There's the guys I'm rooting for, Rashad Ross and the Jeff Badets and the Cameron Artis Paynes. I'd like to see all those guys back in the league again. But Tim Cook, but we'll see. But yeah, I think the mystery part of it comes with the signed quarterbacks, and and I think there could be some interesting and unique names that a lot of people haven't thought of, which makes it the process a lot more fun. It's going to be an extended period this entire draft week that's coming up.
Any Cardell Jones? I mean, we saw pictures of him. Has there been any talk of like they want him to return, or
I think it's possible. Yeah, I think, Mark, it's a good name to bring up. I think it's possible that that Cardell Jones could be back in the league. Maybe as a backup. Maybe he's paired up with King in DC, because that's where I figured Derek King's going to end up, is in DC. So that could be like, it's almost similar to what the Defenders had last time, where they had Tyree Jackson, who's kind of a dual threat hybrid type player, with Cardell, who's more of a pocket passer, although he is mobile. So I could see Cardell on one of the teams. The difference this time between the last time is that Cardell's not the, front and center as one of the assigned highlighted guys. He's going to have to fight for his supper, for lack of a better term, this go around. But why not? Maybe a situation like DC is not bad. To go there with that staff and with Reggie Barlow and Fred Keiss and everybody else. And maybe him with King would be good, because King is a very, unique Kyler Murray-esque type talent, very unconventional, very shorter quarterback, 5'8", 5'9", maybe. And so extremely fast, explosive. And maybe you want to pair him up like a dual quarterback kind of system, sort of what we saw in the USFL with the New Jersey Generals of DeAndre Johnson and Luis Perez. maybe some of these teams decide to employ that type of deal. So I could see Cardell. I'm not saying he's going to be an assigned guy, but I think he's worthy of being a backup at the bare minimum, maybe compete. Who knows?
Well, no, just for the record, for all the researchers out there, Sonic 2 did come out. So therefore the curse is broken. So he should be good to go. All right, Brandon, you are our boots on the ground kind of Vipers guy. You got your Vipers shirt. You're all ready to go. You wrote the article talking about the different stadiums. Anything that you're hearing on that side as far as kind of a resolve? You did post something recently about them actually having a event too.
Yes, so they are having their town hall finally, after most of Vegas was left in the dark for a while. We finally got the event. It's this Tuesday night, from I think 5:30 to 8 in Vegas. And the interesting thing about the invite that they put in there is get ready for us to play in Vegas come February. So I don't know if anything's been locked up, but the more I've read into it, the more things I've seen on Twitter, it does sound like Cashman Stadium could be a done deal. Obviously, with us recording Sunday night, I'm suspecting that probably tomorrow morning, if not on Monday or Tuesday, there will be the official announcement. I would think it'd be very weird for Rod Woodson and the Vegas staff or whoever's going to be at the town hall that they don't have a stadium, because I think that could cause some chaos with season ticket holders that you invited to the town hall. There was some talk I saw earlier that a lot of people were saying that the Las Vegas ballpark where the Las Vegas Aviators play, their president came out in one of I think it was Las Vegas Biz article that said, hey, they're not going to play there. That president recommended Cashman. Saw some back and forth today that they actually may be at the Las Vegas ballpark after all. I don't know what may have changed. I've kind of gone back and forth with some people with that, but in the end, most Las Vegas people keep going back to Sam Boyd Stadium, which we all know is out of the question no matter what. So it definitely sounds like 100% that Allegiant is 100% off the table at this point, and those talks are nowhere to be found anymore.
So what's the deal with Cashman Stadium versus this ballpark? I mean, what's the difference between the two?
So I think
preference.
I would say my preference for TV style would be Las Vegas ballpark. It looks a lot nicer. It has a backdrop to it that says Las Vegas ballpark. I think the attendance is pretty close. It's between 10,000 and 12,000. Now, of course, at Cashman, if the XFL wanted to do what they did with Globe Life Park, aka Choctaw Stadium, and add the bleacher, they could get an additional 4,000 seats. That's up to obviously the Las Vegas, I think it's Lights FC that plays there, local soccer team. If they can kind of reach a deal with them, just like they did the Dallas team that plays at Choctaw still, that could be something that's an investment for both the league and for the soccer team to add 4,000 additional seats. But yeah, if I had a preference, I would go more with Las Vegas ballpark. It's nicer. I follow a few food groups or like Facebook/Instagram accounts of stadium food groups that talk about Las Vegas ballpark being one of the best stadiums, even with MLB, for food.
Interesting.
Like, hey, I want to go there. But if last case scenario, if it comes down to Cashman, I've seen the seating chart. I actually saw someone who created I guess you could say a seating chart based off the soccer team and then insert an XFL field, kind of like the Ticketmaster presentations have been for the other teams or whatnot. And it looked nice. So I'm curious to see, but to me, it sounds like they have something locked down at this point, just because of their wording in emails. And what was interesting is the season ticket holder email I got was different than the actual huddle email I got. The whole thing about the stadium was not in the second email. which I got days later. So I'm
Hmm.
curious if they put that in there because fans are worried.
Yeah. So so Mike is going to be covering the DC Defenders. Brandon is covering the Vegas Vipers. So Mike, give me your reaction to the new DC logos. I mean, we got, if you're watching online, you see I've got the old DC logos behind me. So what was your take on the whole logos things coming out?
No, I'm happy with the logos. I think it's fine. I think you don't want to veer off too far from it because it's such a great brand. Brandon just mentioned the Las Vegas Stadium, and I just want to tie this in with DC, right? So I don't have a problem with a mid-sized stadium. I think ideally a mid-sized stadium or a smaller stadium is perfect for like a new upstart league. You prefer like something that's state of the art, like Audi Field because Audi Field is a beautiful location, beautiful stadium. It's the perfect size for these kind of leagues. You'd like a mid-sized stadium, something that's so you have potential to draw more. So like you have something in that 20 to 30,000 range, even 35 or something. So if maybe you can push it and, get in there because it doesn't look bad if you've got 12, 15,000 in a 25,000 seat stadium, 30,000 seat stadium. So I don't have a problem with, a smaller stadium, and Las Vegas Ballpark would certainly be great for that. As far as the DC logo goes, I noticed at the DC fan get together, they held up the shield flag. And I want to see that shield more prominently used. So hopefully the XFL uses it because I think it's cool gimmickry for fans. It's like an awesome thing. So I think it was a cool part of the Defenders back in 2020. So yeah, I'm happy with what DC there, and I'm anxious to see who they end up drafting. They have a very good personnel staff there with Von Hutchins running the show there and a good coaching staff. So that it's going to be cool to see when these teams start to add players, they're starting to add the personality to their rosters. So, and I think you'll see more people start to follow the league too and take an interest in the league when you see specific names of players. So DC, we knew they weren't going to all of a sudden show up with a purple logo
Yeah.
and be some kind of strange Wranglers team or something.
Yeah.
We knew they were going to be the Defenders, so I mean status quo is a good thing. Some tweaks. I can't wait to see what the helmet and uniforms look like. We might see a little bit variation from the last time. Maybe they'll incorporate black more into this, more so than just the red and white look from 2 years ago. So yeah, I think the logos are fine. I think they'll grow on people like anything else. And we're getting most of the team names back with an exception of a tweak here and there. And the DC Defenders are back, which is great.
Yeah. So one of the things that you notice that people were talking about the Sea Dragons versus the Dragons is that all the letter is part of the logo. And even somebody I was like, well, except for St. Louis. And they were like, no, if you flip it upside down, it's STL. So really the only one is the Guardians. So Brandon, what was your reaction when the Vipers kind of came out with their logo?
I was very happy because I wasn't too fond of the Vipers logo from Tampa Bay in 2020. It was very basic. And then even their alternate logo, the Viper head was too plain. I have seen some mock-ups that people did of the current color scheme of that logo, and it actually kind of looked kind of cool, but it just that branding needed to go away. I felt that you couldn't just move the Vipers to Las Vegas and keep the color scheme, keep that type of stuff. So the black and white, I wish they had put some gold in it just to give a throwback to the Las Vegas Outlaws. But overall, the logo is great. It's great on a t-shirt. And I'm actually glad that they dropped Las Vegas and just calling them Vegas Vipers. It sounds more like aggressive compared to Las Vegas Vipers, like not doing what everyone else is doing. So that's a little bit of a difference, but I like the colors and logo. And I mean, it's the same thing like you're saying with the V, and most all these logos have the logo looks like the actual town name or whatnot. So I'm thrilled with it. I just am curious to see what these jerseys and uniforms look like because Rod Woodson claims they're good. I believe to tend he probably is correct on that one.
So Mike, speaking of all these like uniforms and stuff like that, do you have a sense of what kind of timeline we have? I mean, there's still rules, there's still schedule, there's still uniforms. Any kind of idea of this timeline and with the XFL?
They could be following the model of 3 years ago, which the XFL, obviously they had their draft, but they didn't debut the uniforms until they showed the players at a special event showing up in the uniforms. And that's what we had 3 years ago. So I think, it should be coming up, within a month or so. I would assume, within the next few weeks, perhaps, we should see whoever the Defenders and Vipers players are, the quarterback, etc., in the full, and they'll again, like they did last time with the uniforms, they'll again do tie-ins with ESPN to introduce the uniforms. So it gives the league, even though, excuse me, even though the NFL is ongoing and it's hard to get attention, and you got the CFL with the Grey Cup, Argos, and
Yeah, very excited.
Great next week. Even though all that stuff is going on, it's hard to get attention. It's good that the XFL still has these big announcements, and where we're getting very close now to the start of the season. As crazy as it is, Thanksgiving's right upon us. The new year will be here before you know it. So you got the team schedules, you got the TV schedules. Hopefully soon we'll get the Vegas stadium, get that squared away, so they can start, selling tickets for that. And then the uniforms, the league rules, as you mentioned. So we'll, there's still some big announcements for the league to make. And so yeah, I would think it would make sense the next few weeks for them to do the uniforms, perhaps at, some sort of a get together event or whatever, unveiling, so to speak. And so that's another, I guess, tentpole event for the league to have, because that's going to be a big deal. You can make or break. The Vipers looks like potentially, like I wrote about this at xflnewshub.com. They have potential to have the best overall look, but I got to see the uniforms first. And so I think the Brahmas too. I saw some mock-ups today briefly, dealing with girlfriends and family business and all that, but I saw some really cool mock-ups of the San Antonio Brahmas. And so it's like, whoa, those helmets, the white helmets, the black helmets, that looks, I don't know how the league's going to end up doing it, whether or not they'll have a Steelers like look for Heinz Ward, but you don't want to have a knockoff, but but I think that's the big part. That's the incomplete thing. When I rank the logos and the team names, I constantly mention that, until we see the uniforms and all that, that's really where you can kind of complete the whole look. And that's going to be a big deal. These leagues, they usually get trashed, for during the draft, we'll see people do the Snoop GIF with him saying who every time a player is picked. And so these leagues will get made fun of. A lot of times I'll see somebody in college football debut a new uniform, and you'll see comments like, oh, it looks like the XFL. So hopefully, when these uniforms come out, that because I like the XFL uniforms from 2 years ago, and I love the Battle Hawks helmet and all that with the wings. So hopefully these uniforms are badass, and maybe the Rock's tie-ins with Under Armour and stuff plays into it. We see already Zoa is the official energy drink of the league. So maybe Under Armour can be the outfitter for the league we'll see. But it's going to be a big deal. The look of the league, it ultimately comes down to the quality of football you present, and the broadcast, which I have no doubt on ESPN, ABC, FX are going to be great. But it'd be nice if the uniforms are very cool looking, and if people who are watching the games are attracted to the look of it, and they don't think it's like some rinky-dink league with some crazy looking uniforms, with all due respect to the bored apes of the FCF.
So Brandon, we always have our speculative chats going on our group me. I think fans would pay money to be a part of those chats going on. We all thought that there was going to be this big rollout for these team names and logos, and in fact, it was a press release. Basically, what was your reaction to that? I'll get both of you guys' reaction. Brandon, we'll start with you.
All right. I was kind of disappointed. I know we were talking back in, I think, May, when I first joined everything, of June 1st was supposed to be an original date. It didn't happen. And then we got the town hall in Arlington at the end of July. Still nothing there. We at least got the cities and stuff. And then here we go with the hurricane. I still think that may have been the original time frame. But I also wonder if there are some tweaks done in between there as well. I was okay with it. I thought it would have been really cool if they actually gave the huddle members and season ticket holder members the opportunity to see everything up front, like revealed it in person, compared to a press release. But obviously it's 2022 going on to 2023. The internet is, all you have to do is take a picture and it's trending. So I get the press conference. I do wish there would have been a little more of 2019/2020 season with those hype videos. Thought they were kind of like, ugh. But too much stock footage from Showcase is my opinion. But I wasn't too. It rolled out. It was nice, and I think it kind of was a turning event for the league, in my opinion, because a lot of negative comments just up and disappeared. People were actually talking about the team logos, and as much as people didn't like the Brahmas name at first, a lot of people were diving into that team once they saw the logo and color scheme and stuff. So I'm okay with it.
Yeah, Mike, what was your reaction? You were the one that was like, you're like, oh, there's no way that would just be a press release.
Yeah, they did the ESPN video with Laura Rutledge. Obviously, that was all over ESPN Sports Center and did all that. They didn't make a big deal of it. I don't want to say, like a year ago, I would have said maybe it's COVID related not to do in-person stuff, but they didn't make a big press conference at each individual city and all that. So they could have done more. I don't want to say I was underwhelmed. I did expect a little more. They were quick with it. They teased it on Sunday, the day before Halloween. And then they did a little bit similar to 2019, where you show bits and pieces of the logo and have people guessing. And then the very next day, they revealed it. So could they have done more, some type of show, maybe a little bit more elaborate on the videos, maybe updating them a little bit, not using so much stock footage, I suppose. But I think people are excited that they finally arrived. They're like kind of relieved. We knew they were coming. The league's not going to get on the field naked with no uniforms. They're not going to have no names. Not going to have no players. All these things were eventually coming. It just came later than people expected. So yeah, I wouldn't say I was whelmed. I guess I wasn't overwhelmed or underwhelmed. So and these things are important for the league. Like right now, to be honest with you, and Brandon talks about Vegas. I've been in touch with people in Vegas and people who are boots on the ground that work in the sport, have written XFL articles, few and far between, but a few different people, and they're not really, that market's not really interested yet in the XFL. I had one writer in Las Vegas tell me, right now we're not interested unless we can talk to The Rock.
Interesting.
So basically, it's going to take time to build up interest and awareness. That's big with these leagues, is to build up awareness in your particular markets. So players will help, and these announcements will help. Little by little, you build up steam. So they needed these team names, and they need all these different tentpole announcements to build up momentum and anticipation. I think they can present a very good product in Vegas. They have a very cool looking team. Rod Woodson is awesome, but some of these markets might take a little bit of work to win them over, and then you have to question the choice. Now, I like Vegas. I mean, obviously, I'm an original XFL guy, covered the league back then. So I like the Vegas market, and I love the Outlaws back in the day, but it's a different time now than it was then. And they're just starting to come around. Vegas is hot, but Raiders haven't been so hot this year. Yeah. But yeah, they're just starting to come around. So I don't know if that's the type of market that's accepting of what would be considered a secondary pro football league. I think you need these announcements, and you need to build up anticipation and to start promoting. That's the one thing. Say what you want, and a lot of people have negative feelings. I get it, towards Vince McMahon. But anybody I talked to in XFL 2020 always raved about his direction, his vision, and his promotion. And so you can have hatred for the guy if you want, but he's got because of his hard work, he's got a global enterprise that has billion-dollar deals with Fox and with NBC, and their international powerhouse, and have been the whole time. And when the XFL was around, with him, and if you talk to anybody in the league who's in a prominent position with them, there was a lot more promotion, and you knew the XFL was coming. And so that's what really needs to pick up with this league. With a lot of what we don't take into account, because everybody talks about The Rock and Danny and Redbird is a monster in their space. The Rock is a monster in his space. Danny Garcia is a monster in his space. But these people have never run a league before. So they've never run a pro sports league before. It's a different animal doing this. And there's going to be some hiccups and all that along the way. You got to expect it, because even though this is a reboot, and there's some XFL 2020 people, this is really a new start, a new vision, and that they're still hiring people as we go along, still working on the Vegas Stadium. I've followed these leagues my whole life. New leagues always have hiccups. It's why Fox with the USFL decided to simplify things, just do a bare bones league. Everybody plays in one location. That's it. So this is very easy. We don't even have to hire that many people. We don't have to hire presidents. We don't have to hire a bunch of social media people. Let's just go play one place. That makes it so much easier, right? And so the XFL is trying to do big league. So they're trying to go into cities. They're trying to do all that. So you're gonna have mistakes and hiccups and all that. So I find this process very fascinating. I think the league needs to do a better job of promoting in the next few months. It's good, as you mentioned, people will see on XFL News. They've seen it already because this will air tomorrow. But we're seeing some ESPN shows now that are dedicated to the XFL with the draft and all that. So that's awesome. More of that, and little by little, word of mouth, because they got the hardcores and the hardcore football fans that love these types of leagues. But they need to, pull in some of the mainstream football audience to get that sample casual audience that doesn't, that isn't receptive to these types of leagues. And you're going to need to do that in markets like Vegas.
Yeah. And so big of the part of the big deal with promoting the league, of course, is the players. So Brandon, who are some guys out there that you're like, hey, I would love to see them on a Viper or even just in the XFL?
Well, I feel definitely for sure some of those names from 2020 that being originally a Dallas Renegades season ticket holder, was Jeff Badette, Cameron Artis Payne. I know, Mike, you had talked about when we were going through Jordan Palmer's thing about potentially Jalen McCladen, I believe is how you pronounce his name, being their quarter. Yeah, being their quarterback.
One of their quarterbacks. He was with the Wildcats. Joey Clinkscales had him with LA back in XFL 2020. McClendon is going to be one of the, now whether or not he's drafted or one of the two assigned. So right now the word is that we'll see. By the time this airs, maybe we'll know more. But everyone I've talked to in the XFL recently, and recent sourcing has told me that there's going to be 2 quarterbacks assigned per team. So whether or not Jalen McClendon is one of those two, it's very possible. He's definitely linked to that team for sure. So I would not shock me if he's one of the two. Perhaps he's drafted by Vegas in the open phase. That's another area that we can talk about, but that's quarterbacks can be selected in the open phase. So, but yeah, there are players like that. You're mentioning Brandon from XFL 2020 that will be a part of the league.
So are we going to get, so is the idea that we're going to get on the quarterback selection showcase, whatever it is, on Tuesday, 2 quarterbacks per team?
That's what I'm hearing. Now, maybe that changes, but by the time this airs, maybe that, but the recent sourcing that I've gotten from people within the league is that they've been told that it's going to be 2, the idea is 2 quarterbacks per team. Now, the XFL through ESPN, when ESPN had their press release for the team names and logos, they accidentally released that information. And I don't know if you guys remember that or not, but it was in the article itself that there would be 16 quarterbacks, 2 announced per team assigned with the exact date that we're getting. So could that change at the last minute? I suppose. But from at this very second, as we're recording this, that's what I'm hearing, 2 per team. So and I wrote an article obviously on the site, tentatively assigned. The keyword there is tentative, but we were Jawan Pass in San Antonio, Jalen McClendon, Las Vegas, Stephen Montez, I heard in Seattle. I'm hearing conflicting things about Cole McDonald in Seattle, the Hawaii quarterback who was drafted by the Tennessee Titans. He could either be in Houston or Seattle. Makes a little bit of sense in Seattle with June Jones, but we'll see. That could be an interesting battle there if it's Montez and Cole McDonald there. So those are, you mentioned players that I'm interested in. So like a lot of people don't know a lot of these players. I made a joke earlier about people using the Snoop GIF, but Jarrett Stearns is an interesting guy. We haven't seen his name. He led the entire nation last year in receiving. He was cut by the Bucs in training camp. People might be familiar with Bailey Zappi. Now with New England Patriots, he was his number 1 target there, Western Kentucky. I really like Abram Smith from Baylor. He was, I believe, 4th or 5th in the nation in rushing. He's got a lot of workouts, but he just hasn't latched on the team. I'm kind of surprised. Power back has big playability. These are maybe not household names, but if you're a college football person, you know who they are. I think for the league is going to need. I like a lot of these young quarterbacks. Carson Strong. We'll see about Cole Kelly. Carson Strong could be a very good player. Akil Glass in Vegas, likely. We'll see if he agrees with the league or not. But because Dwayne Taylor is the offensive coordinator, once he finishes up at Alabama A&M, makes sense for Akil Glass to rejoin his former OC in Vegas. We'll see. The names that I'm interested in, I think the league needs some big name guys. So a couple at least. And there might still be waiting on these players, but it would be awesome to see a Josh Rosen in the league. You want to talk about somebody who would get mainstream football people interested, whether you think he's good or not, whether you think he flopped in the NFL or not. Josh Rosen would get a lot of attention. He'd be one of the names they'd be mentioning front and center on ESPN as playing in the XFL. There have been talks there. Whether or not he'll come on board, we'll see. At least he might not be until a January guy. I'd love to see Chris Streveler. I think Chris Streveler, he's currently on the Jets practice squad. I don't know what's going to happen to him when the season ends. He is such a lovable and marketable guy. He's like a muscle-bound superhero on the field. He's so much fun to watch, and he was lights out during the preseason. The New York Jets fan base, I read about the New York Jets at the JetPress.com. The New York Jets fan base instantly fell in love with him. He's the kind of guy you can market. I know Anthony Beck covered the New York Jets during the preseason, was fully aware of Streveler's magic antics in the preseason with his game-winning drives and all that. So I'm sure he would love to add him. But that would be more of a January thing. But I think it would be great for the league if they had a few, because some people like me might know the Cole Kellys and the Carson Strongs and the Akil Glasses and be familiar with how good of prospects these players were and in college and how they've been overlooked. And it's great to see them get an opportunity. They're Kings. But it would be nice if a Brett Hundley, a Deshaun Kaiser, Josh Rosen, if some of these names, we'll see Garrett Gilbert maybe in January. And if somebody, I think Rosen is the kind of guy you can, I'm not saying he may not end up being great, but you never know. But I think he's the kind of guy that really needs to resurrect his career. And I think he has name value and would get interest, and people who are not even interested in the XFL will watch if Rosen is playing at least the first game.
Yeah. Now for this draft though, but it seems like your USFL players, your CFL players, this might not even be the big draft. Because of these big names might be coming later on.
Yeah, that's possible. Anybody who was a USFL player that signed with an NFL team and was released and is out there in the market is available to potentially be drafted, right? So there's them. And then we've got the players I mentioned earlier in this conversation, the AA players, the Alumni Academy players who are graduates are going to be part of the draft pool. The XFL 2020 guys are going to be part of the draft pool. And all the players, the 1,100 players that are from the last three draft classes. They're not drafting 1,700 players. That's going to be the tough part about this draft is you're going to see roughly, I think the number they mentioned was 450 players. Teams can pick up to 60 players if they want to, but they can bow out at any moment. The first day of the draft is 44. Let's assume the signed quarterbacks is 2. That's 46. They take 3 specialists on day number 2. And so that would get you to 49. And then they might add some other players there in the open phase. But they still got to get to 66. So Doug Whaley mentioned that they're expecting anywhere 75 or more players in that January period. So we'll see. Those are practice squad guys, USFL guys whose contract expired. But yes, CFL guys, well, there are some, I think Josh Huff, Cole McDonald obviously was a CFL guy. I've heard rumblings about DJ Foster, who opted out of the CFL. But obviously, Canadian Football League players are under contract. And free agency for the CFL doesn't start until February. So I don't know how many of those players, at least in year 1, are going to be a part of the XFL. It's more the players that I just mentioned.
So basically for this draft, we're not going to get any Colin Kaepernicks, Terrell Owens. I will still go to bat. If you followed us years ago, there's a whole controversy about Terrell Owens. His name was on a list I saw, and I posted it, and then they took it off.
And then another Owens showed up, Thomas Owens. So there were two TOs, both receivers. But yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
Colin Kaepernick would be earth-shattering if that ever happened. I haven't heard anything about his name in
mhm.
there. He has only has designs of playing in the NFL, so his asking price is probably very high, like it was for the last two
Yeah.
uh, spring leagues. So I don't see him in there. But you mentioned veterans. There could be a few. I mean, it would be fun to see a Tio or Ocho Cinco or somebody like that. Why not? But
Right.
but we did see Charles James, who played in the XFL and the AAF. He mentioned that him and Dominique Rogers-Cromartie, who I guess would be
Oh,
coming out of retirement, he's a former first-round cornerback. He mentioned on social media, whether he was joking or not, that he's going to be playing in the XFL. But would I be shocked? Because would I be shocked if a couple of veterans show up in the league? Sure. I think they're going to skew more younger, but it wouldn't hurt to have a couple of named guys sprinkled in here and there.
yeah. I was throwing this one out last week to Dave Naylor, who was on the program. What about Bo Levi Mitchell returning to the States, playing in Texas to wrap up his career in the United
I don't
States?
know if that happens. Right. I don't know if that happens with Bo now. It's a fun thing to think about. There was a player, and I do know, and I think I mentioned this with Emery Hunt on his show. There was a player that in the CFL, Vernon Adams, who I think
Hmm.
would be a lock for any team that has June Jones on it. And I know that during the draft process that Vernon Adams is a shorter player, so he was kind of overlooked in the draft process. And I think June Jones would absolutely love to have him on the team. So could we see that in the future? Where maybe a quarterback of that ilk that has somewhat of a name in Canada. Bo Levi would be fascinating. I think he's going to try his hand to try to redeem himself next year in the CFL. We'll see if
Yeah.
it's with Saskatchewan or someone else. But I think Bo's going to hang around Canada for 1 more year because I think he's like a man on a mission to prove that he isn't, as the kids say these days, washed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So Brandon, you got some shocking picks that might happen for this
Oh,
draft?
I'm wondering too, and I don't know, not 100% current on NFL rosters, but I'm wondering if Josh Gordon shows up anywhere.
Oh, that's true.
Him, I think that I can't find who it was, but there was a quarterback for the Glacier Boys in season 1. It's not DeAndre. One of the other guys that
Jackson Erdman, maybe you're thinking of or not?
maybe.
Well, Erdman just, believe it or not, he went to the European League of Football. He's won 2 championships in a row, and he just
Oh,
retired.
okay.
He just retired. I know he played in FCF. He was pretty good in that too. So, but I don't know if that's who you're thinking.
Maybe I'll have to come back to it, but I could see, like you said, someone like T.O. randomly showing up. I'm gonna hope that Antonio Brown stays away, even though
Yeah,
he
it's
claims
true.
he has a XFL team, which is the weirdest thing I've ever seen out of him. But okay,
Mhm.
yeah, I had
The
predicted
problem
up
with,
front.
yeah, I'm sorry to
Go ahead,
interrupt you,
Mike.
Brandon, but the
No,
problem
you're
with
good.
some of the veterans is they're so used to a certain specific salary. I'm not saying
Mhm.
Tio won't do it or Chad Ochocinco won't do it. Like for me, like as you were talking, you sparked an idea. Like I'd love to see somebody like John Ross in the XFL,
Yeah.
the fastest guy ever to run the 40 in the NFL Combine. First round pick of the Bengals hasn't worked out in the NFL. He's worked out for recent NFL teams, so maybe he gets another shot somewhere. But I'd love to see him in the XFL. That'd be like guys like him though that have been in the league for 3-4 years. I don't know how close he is to getting his pension and all that. You have to be in the NFL for a certain amount of time. They're accustomed to making 6 figures, even if it's on the lower end. So convincing those type of players that are in that 26, 27 year old range to come back. But that's somebody like I'm a big fan on the redemption stories, the Josh Rosen types, the former first round pick that just for whatever reason injuries otherwise didn't work out. So yeah, Brandon just made me think of John Ross when he was
Mm.
Yeah,
mentioning some of
that's a
those
good one.
players there. Yeah, so I was thinking of, just it would be nice. I wouldn't. A couple of those stories helps. Like and then those types of players choosing the XFL. Sure, there'll be people that mock them or make fun of them. Like, look what happened to him. He was a first round pick and now he's in the XFL.
Yep.
But it shows how much they love the game if they're still like want to still play pro ball, and you never know. Maybe somebody just explodes. Maybe John
Yeah.
Ross comes in the league and explodes and goes nuts, and that's his way back in. Because right
Yeah.
now he got to the point where teams are thinking about playing him at defensive back rather than wide receiver.
Wow.
So this is a guy who's a first round wide receiver. You would think that would be your Jamar Chase, your Justin Jefferson, your whomever.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it didn't work out that way.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, I appreciate this. It's going to be a crazy week. And I'm just thankful for the fact that we can actually talk about players finally after, 2 years of doing this stuff and waiting and waiting. We finally, I mean, this is going to be a huge week this week. Everybody stay tuned and also follow these guys on social. We'll start with you, Brandon. Give them all your social media stuff so they can follow you.
Yeah, I'm at Branderson 1987 on Instagram and Twitter. But yeah, follow me. I will share anything that comes up with Vegas or any real XFL content here on XFL News Hub or whatnot. So give me a shout out, follow, and hey, I'm here.
All right. And Mike, what about where can people find you?
I write for XFLnewshub.com, CFLnewshub.com, thejetpress.com, and you can follow me at by Mike Mitchell, BYMIKEMITCHELL. And this week's going to be crazy. So get ready for DC Defenders 44 rounds of players written up. I did this back in 2019. So I'll be breaking down I did this for the generals in the USFL, breaking down, these new leagues when they have these 50, 60, 70 player drafts. My job to write everything about each specific pick. So you're going to get 44 rounds. So if you have some time on your hands and you want to know a little bit more about who's playing on the Defenders this year, check me out at XFL News Hub during the week. It's going to be fun. I'm familiar with a lot of these players, and so it's fun to share my knowledge, and I'm excited about the guys who are going to get a shot.
All right. Well, the 3-point era is right at our grasp, guys. I appreciate it so much. Thanks for being on.
Thank you
Mark, for having us.